Just 2 short chapters, the book of Haggai is compact and concise. Rebuilding the temple after its Babylonian ruin is Haggai's prophetic advice. One of 3 minor prophets speaking directly to those who returned after the 70-year exile, Haggai spoke encouragement and correction to the people who had been complacent a while. This true history is set in September of 520 BC when Darius was king. In 538, he had allowed the people to return to Jerusalem, their families to bring. In 536, construction on the temple began with the foundation and altar being repaired from rubble. After this, however, in 534 BC, the people and their progress really began to struggle. Work on the temple ceased for 14 years. For this, the people had an excuse. They said, sounding spiritual, that it was not the time to rebuild, being rather obtuse. They ignored the command of God. They left his house in ruins, unrepaired, while they busily paneled their own homes. Comfort for themselves they prepared. They had many reasons to delay. The land had been neglected. The work itself was hard. They faced hostile enemies actively threatening them as near as their own backyard. Yet from this story, we can ponder, what work of God are we neglecting? What do we rationalize? What areas in our lives from God need a little correcting? God saw, he heard the people responding through Haggai, the called prophet of the Lord of hosts. He asked the people to consider their ways, their focus, which was on establishing their own doorposts. Yet they harvested little, never felt as if they had enough, were clothed but not warm, full but not filled. See, if our priorities are off, if we are wholly self-focused, nothing will satisfy us. Only in him are we ultimately fulfilled. We can examine our priorities, our focus, but also the results. When God is neglected, nothing works right. God works all things for the good of those who love him, correcting and directing in his word, in drought, even in blight. Everything is under God's mighty command, and he used multiple means to show the way. It is our choice then to respond, to turn and repent, to follow and obey. God called the people into action. Go, build the house that I may take pleasure in it and be glorified, said he. It is not about ego, but about what is best for the people, keeping God at our center. His presence with us is key. Then in the temple, now at home in our hearts as Lord, he unites us, holds the future we are moving towards. Then the people obeyed the Lord. Starting at the leadership level, they heeded his direction. They feared the Lord, which means reverent awe and respect, responding to his loving correction. And God empowered them, stirring up his spirit within both the leaders and the lowly, and they together worked on the house of the Lord of hosts, their God most holy. Now into October 520 BC, God spoke through Haggai again to the leaders and priests. With the full remnant of people, he had a message most plain. Be strong, all you people of the land. Work, for I am with you. I strengthen your hand. God, through Haggai, reminded the people of his past covenants and history. His spirit remains with his people, though we see this dimly, this faithful mystery. He encourages the people's work for and empowered by him, telling them to fear not. While our lives and worship may feel in ruins sometimes, holding to him, we will not be distraught. On March 12, 515 BC, the work on the temple was complete. While there are ups and downs, working for and with the Lord is most sweet. The Lord is faithful. This fulfilled the prophecy from Jeremiah's scroll. He fulfills his promises, keeps his word, constant and whole. Haggai then predicts a future temple that will be even more glorious than this or Solomon's of the past. This place of worship will be after a divine great shaking of the nation occurs. Yet God is steadfast. The kingdom that cannot be shaken is what Jesus will establish when he returns with his church to rule and to reign. God, the creator and owner, declares what is his, all silver and gold. But he is not vain. He showcases his majesty, authority, and power while demonstrating what he loves most, his people, his treasure. For them, for us, he gave his only Son to die and pay sin's most costly measure. Because of this, because of Jesus, we can have peace with God. This glorious future temple will be full of it completely. And this peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the establishment of a right relationship with God given through Jesus most sweetly. This restored relationship is central. Haggai warns the people living in the Holy Land itself doesn't make the people acceptable. Going through the motions, focusing on our works and accomplishments, to this, we self-centered people are most susceptible. So Haggai encourages them to consider all the blessings of God. He saw provision in the fields and in the seed. We see his perfect provision in his Son, who for us came to pay our debt, to suffer and to bleed. Well before Jesus walked on the earth, we see him and the need for him throughout this book of encouragement, examination, and correction. The book ends describing Zerubbabel being chosen by God and given royal authority. This too points in Jesus' direction. Zerubbabel was the last person to be in both the line of Mary and the line of Joseph before the lines grew apart. See Jesus soon coming to this past people and coming again, now any day, was God's royal plan from the start. These details in this short book showcase God's sovereignty, his holiness, and his might. They point to Jesus, the Prince of Peace, the Redeemer, the Cornerstone, our light. We can also see how a word of godly correction and encouragement goes a long way. So, dear Christian, pray and examine what God might be calling you to do and say today.